Upasana and Saubiya, are you here? Okay. And Shishir Gupta, you are here, please welcome. And Dr. Ankur Parasar? He's not, okay. So I think rule of the game is 10 minutes per presenter. Okay. So rule of the game is 10 minutes per presentation, and collectively we take all the questions and we discuss at the end, so that we have collectively, we have 4 speakers, so hopefully we'll have some time. Acha, okay, you're from Madagascar, welcome. Okay, so 5 speakers, so we'll collectively take all the questions later. In the interest of time, a request, Dr. Bhagwan has requested to go first. So let me welcome you, and then if you could introduce yourself and the presentation. 10 minutes here.
Okay, where's the presentation? A lot more about the relevant to today's discussion around WASH financing and why we need this vehicle. So I can't see the presentation. Okay, so we talking about this, creating this enabling, that's the key part, environment for adopting climate resilient sanitation. And there's 2 elements to strengthening the whole institutional process. To do anything, you need money. Money is important to drive change. Money is also important to drive disruption. That's the second aspect to it. But we're not short of technologies. And you heard Professor Kassan today in the morning, he said, if we want to solve the WASH problems, we have to do things differently. And the discourse we had today, and I was glad I was listening to a whole lot of finances. I'm not a financer, I'm a technocrat. But you have the private sector finances and you have the public sector finances. What we need to understand, the private sectors are driven by profits and they manage the risks. The public sectors and all the institutions that serve as public sectors are sovereign lenders. They don't take any risk, they just give national government money and they say we'll hold you accountable for 30 years. So the institutional model is that local government don't know how to raise financing. They have no competency and capacity to raise financing. They are built to build infrastructure. Okay, fiscal transfers, grants come from national government and they build infrastructure. So for them to get into the game of financing is a very, very difficult one. So we're trying to bridge that gap around how we can get more accountability at local government level to raise financing. And one is a capacity building. I think somebody talked about it. But the issue is about project preparation. It's very important. Private sector will not give you money if you don't have a good business case, you don't have a good case of how you're going to transition and pay those loans. So we've done something very big in South Africa. We disrupted everything from a policy level. In fact, we went to cabinet, and the first thing we told cabinet, you have to accept that no one in this country is going to get universal coverage of sanitation that is same for all. We cannot sewer this country. It's financially impossible, and we don't have any water. We need to go with a whole lot of alternative options, and the future is going to be a mix. And the more important thing, it's going to be climate resilience. Now, central waterborne systems are not climate resilience at all. I've lived to two, three day zeros in South Africa. In Cape Town, they talked about water security. No one talked about sanitation security. You must feel the pain of constipation. Then you'll understand the value of sanitation. And that's the important key, because we're locked into water and flushing, but we don't think about what happens when you can't flush. And we're not all designed for open defecation. So this is where we're driving this concept of climate resilient sanitation. And I'm not going to go through all of that. It's all about GHG emissions. And we know from research that wastewater treatment plants, etc., emit large amounts of it. But decentralization offers you opportunity to reduce it. You can't eliminate it, but you can reduce it, decentralize it, and not have it concentrated, so that nature can take its course. Not going to go into this introduction, you all heard enough of it, but the incentive is there. That's the important. That for every dollar you spend on water and sanitation, in the climate resilience space, there's a $21 return. Okay, that's the key thing when you take all of this stuff. And similarly with floods, if you invest in floods, there's $62 return. So that's the incentive you have to keep in mind. Now, there's a lot of approaches to deal with this. There's adaptation, there's mitigation, but off-grid, on-site reuse, as they call it, is the biggest game changer that we have. The problem is that the developing countries are not leapfrogging it. You see your policies in India, everything is FSTP or STP driven. Build big, build beautiful. They haven't seen what happens with tornadoes, cyclones, etc. To recover from a centralized system is a 20-year horizon. It might be okay in the West because they have a lot of finances. We don't have a lot of finances, so it takes a very, very long time to fix those kind of disasters. So going off the grid or decentralized or whatever you call it is very key for us when it comes to sanitation. And I'm only going to talk about that part. So we've driven this policy change at a national level where we've created an industrial policy to stimulate the market and the industry for manufacturing. You can't build roads when you don't have cars. It's the same thing. You can't talk climate sanitation when you don't have products. So we've driven that through an industrial policy with a lot of incentives for the market to grow and produce a whole lot of solutions. We've changed the national master plan to have a window from 2025 to start scaling up the stuff. And then we have a development plan it's already encouraging recycling and reuse as now a target. It's no more just casual. Now, in these things, there's a lot of things you have to fix in a system. You can't just start and say, here's a technology, etc. You have to create a market. Market creates demand, whether you're rich or poor, and that creates aspiration and you start growing it. So there's lots of things happening. We are targeting the four aspects of institution financing, the user interface, but also the infrastructure where it's failing, because we have lots of failing infrastructure and we want to capitalize on those failing infrastructure as the big change in the system. So I'll just show you one example, because to change and disrupt the system, you have to become disruptive. You have to create it and make it criminal. And that's the difficulty, is that whenever there's a problem, no mayor, no official, no consultant goes to jail for making the wrong decision. So we brought in some regulations, and you'll see it's very this thing that it says in areas that are dense, formal, medium, etc., where there is a resource scarcity. I'm going to try and do it through 3 minutes. Or inadequate capacity, okay, in the existing system. It's going to become criminal to build many more houses or create demand around it. So you can't keep growing a city to infinity and expect the infrastructure to give you the same outcome. And we've seen this with the Ganges. Cities keep growing, shit flows in the streams, and we never catch up. So that's criminal. So we brought this in to say, if a mayor approves that, we'll take him and we'll put him in jail. Those kind of very harsh ones. And we put in also an enabler to say, in areas where there is infrastructure capacity problems, we'll allow developers and etc. to bypass municipal processes and go decentralized. Okay, so you create the enablement to get industry to drive that. So we've done a lot. We've created a whole policy and regulatory environment, bylaws, standards. You all heard me before talking about NSS standards, etc. We've prepared the market. We're ready. We've done enough demonstrations, etc. We've created the market. We've stopped there and we said no more. It's time to scale up, because if we don't scale up, we will never get to drive the change. So we created a special purpose vehicle through the development bank that we have in South Africa, a special program on what we now call the Water Efficient Sanitation Solutions Program, and it's purely designed to scale up. We're creating sweet financing mechanisms to all the stuff you heard today, blended finance, etc., public-private partnerships. But the key thing is helping local government with project preparation, because they've never done this before. So helping them do spatial planning, do proper costing, finding right institutional partnerships and model, and finding the money to make that happen. Doesn't move. Next. Within that, we've done some novel things of creating for sanitation climate first framework, where we can assess a whole lot of technologies, etc., that follows the HAZOP process that's already developed, but adapting it to sanitation. We've gone through processes of rating technologies and shortlisting the ones that fit within the climate resilient framework. We've tested it with some of the technologies we have, and we've been demonstrating, and that works quite well. We now have a suite where we can narrow down the kind of solutions that align to being climate resilient. So very quickly in closing, this new purpose vehicle, I've just started there. I'm leading it at a country level through the ministry, through the ministers. So I'm the country lead in shaping this program. I've just started in January. I have 1 year to build it up into a model that we will see more projects going through the pipeline, and we'll see more uptake from municipalities. Hopefully I can share my experiences around it, but we've set the policy and the regulation and the legislative part in motion. It's now bridging that between local government capacity, financing. Implementation has a long lead. You don't build it in 1 day. We're not interested in that. We're locking the decisions, and then whatever goes out to procurement, we leave that to them. So several of this is happening, and it's an exciting prospect because we have the political buy-in to move in this direction as a long term. Our own calculation is that by 2030, if 30% of our sanitation systems are non-sewage, off-grid, there's a 35% reduction in our water demand, okay? But that also puts less pressure on the infrastructure because you're not reading all those peak. In this waste systems, we are recycling on-site for non-potable use in the beginning. So we're not putting demand on existing resources. The back-end infrastructure to bring water reduces by 35%, so you have smaller pipes, etc., lesser peaks, but then you don't need wastewater treatment systems. So whatever is existing infrastructure of sewage and wastewater would give you another 40 years of capacity without investing. So the equation at the moment is favorable. The investment is high. I'm not saying that the technology is cheap, but when you're doing the life cycle analysis, it's far more effective than us rebuilding sewer systems. And this has got the interest, of the work we're doing in America, in France. They've started to take similar decisions to actually leapfrog in many of the older places where they can't replace sewers and wastewater treatment systems. So that is very quickly, what we're doing at it's called the Water Partnerships Office. It's a very novel. There's 6 legs to it. Non-revenue is one of them. I'm not leading that. There's desalination, there's water reuse at scale, and I'm running the WEST program called the Water Efficient Sanitation. So yeah, that's it.
Presentation also giving us an overview of the policy and governance landscape of your climate first sanitation framework. And you also highlighted a very important aspect that once you start setting up the policy and regulation, you start building up a market. You allow both the demand side and supply side players to slowly come up. I forgot to introduce you earlier. Jay has over 30 years of water sanitation experience and he has been holding several leading positions, including the chair of South African ministers on water and sanitation. So thank you very much. I'm sure you have few queries. Please note it down, and we'll also take up, because this is a very important aspect that Jai has highlighted. And we have a lot to learn from South African experience. We have been doing some partnerships with cities like Johannesburg, where our students are going and learning few things, but this is really very, very interesting. So now let me invite our next speaker from Madagascar. I'm sorry, your name, you have to help me pronouncing, but what I'm picking up is RABEMANANJARA. Is it that correct? Welcome, RABEMANANJARA. He's talking about strengthening governance and financing for inclusive climate resilient WASH in Madagascar. He has long experience in working in WASH sector, first as an UNICEF volunteer, and also working with Catholic Relief Services. Incidentally, I am an earlier employee of CRS India. So we are fellow from same organization.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon again. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my work, which entitled Strengthening WASH and Governance, WASH Systems in Madagascar. Sorry for the technical issue. Yes. It's created last year with young people which working on international NGO before, and decided to create our own in improving climate resilience through agriculture activities, WASH, nutrition, and governance activities. So we are now seeking opportunity from around the world to support us from our activity. Okay, Madagascar is part of Africa country. As you can see on the map, we faces many WASH challenges because nearly 2/3 of the population lack access to safely drinking water managed, and over 80% of population has no improved sanitation, and the service gaps are made worse by our strong climate vulnerability, because in the south, drought increased the vulnerability of water availability, and in the east, cyclones and heavy rains damaged infrastructure, WASH infrastructure. And to amplify these challenges, weak governance and limited financing reinforce the fragility of the systems. Why this study? We need stronger evidence on how governance and financing influence the WASH system, the resilience of WASH systems in a climate vulnerable context. In Madagascar, responsibility across ministry is also fragmented, leading to inefficiency and duplication of efforts. Heavy reliance on emergency responses for during shocks, for example, water trucking in the south and even in the capital in Antananarivo during flood. The study tried to fill that gap on governance and financing for the resilience of WASH systems. The study tried to examine what are the governance bottlenecks that constrain WASH service delivery, and how is the adequacy and the sustainability of our current mechanisms of financing mechanisms, and third, what innovations could be stronger the WASH system and the WASH resilience in the country. I studied work began with the policy and budget analysis for the past decade, and the next key informant interviews were carried out with national government and also NGOs, service providers, and also community leaders to capture the perspective at every level of the systems. And some case studies were carried out in the settlement of Antananarivo and in the rural Jot in the south of the regions. For governance measures, findings were identified during the study. First one is the fragmented mandates across institutions. As I told before, there is a fragmentation leading to duplication of effort and overlapping of intervention across ministries. And second, the weak regulatory enforcement that constrain water quality and infrastructure compliance, and also the resilience, the sustainability of infrastructure. Third, limited community participation were identified. Furthermore, even though the community plays a crucial role in system management at community level. And fourth, insufficient monitoring and accountability lead the transparency and the good governance of the systems. On the financial side, as you can see, there are 5 technical findings. Around 70% of our WASH and investment rely on external aid. Till now, even construction, establishing a little bit infrastructure need external aid to be constructed. And national budget allocation for WASH is yet below 1% of GPTs. It is very low to sustain and to improve, to expand WASH service delivery. And third, limited private sector engagement is also observed that limit the innovations and the innovation of activities in WASH sectors. And the high climate-related loss, because during shocks, for example, a flood, there is frequent repair that amplify the lack of budget, because during drought, during flood, for example, we need, after the flood, we need to repair, to maintain all the infrastructure, so that the cost is higher after these shocks. And fifth, sustainable reliance on emergency intervention, especially during drought in the south and in the capital also. What is the impact of the climate in the WASH systems? Drought implies the depletion of water resources, and the cyclones and storms implies the destruction of pipe and tanks and latrine, sanitation infrastructure, and flood implies the contamination of water resources, giving the outbreak disease. And all these pressures amplified, increase the cost of operation and maintenance of WASH systems. Emerging pathways on governance innovations. Decentralized water management committees were identified as potential to develop in the country. That is involved community engagement and participation on the WASH service delivery. And stronger coordination mechanism at local and national levels also taking in place. And participatory planning tools for engaging community members and community leaders on WASH activities. And Oh, please. And community-centered accountability framework were implemented also that improved engagement of community at WASH services. On the financing innovation, these are the pathways identified during the study. The blended financing, as we talked during the day, all the day today, and community-based recovery model was also identified as potential that should be explored. And use of climate adaptation funds for WASH for the planning of these shocks should be implemented also, and improved budget of operation and maintenance is very crucial for the sustainability and the resilience of WASH systems. To conclude, strengthening the governance requires the clearer institutional mandate and strengthen regulatory mechanisms and institutionalize the community participation, which is very important, their appropriation and involvement in WASH activities. And strengthening financing means that diversifying funds from public, from private sector and other sources, leverage climate fund for the WASH system activities, and ensure also the affordability for a vulnerable population for WASH activities. Thank you for your attention.
I think a big round of applause again for Mr. RABEMANANJARA. And also apologies for a little technical glitch, but you shared a very interesting presentation case that you're bringing from Madagascar about strengthening governance and financing for inclusive climate resilient WASH system. One very interesting finding that stood out from your study is about integrated governance and diversified portfolio of financing instrument. And although the earlier speaker highlighted that every dollar spent on sanitation system yields a benefit of about $22, it is really startling to see that less than 1% is spent on the GDP towards WASH. Thank you very much for sharing this. So now we move on to our next speaker, Tushar Chakrabarty from Janaagraha. His presentation on rethinking of operation maintenance financing in urban water sanitation sector, bridging the cost recovery gap in India. Is it, I think, a joint author? So Tushar has a 5-year experience working in the field of public finance. He has worked extensively with finance of the central and state government, and has authored multiple publications at Janaagraha. His work relates to municipal finance and leveraging resources for better mobilization of municipal's own source revenue. And this is jointly co-authored with his colleague, Vasu Saha, who is a senior associate and also public policy professional. Welcome, both Vasu and Tushar.
For the last 2.5 decades, and a lot of the presentation and our findings that we are going to present here has been developed over the years as we have worked with data and field insights around what we have seen on the ground. So in the presentation today, we are largely focusing on how to go about financing our operation and maintenance expenditure vis-a-vis urban water supply. So a lot of improvement in service delivery has happened in urban water supply, and that has largely been driven by your institutional funding. And when I say institutional funding, I mean central government, state government, and multilateral organizations such as ADB, World Bank, and the like. So number of households covered by piped water supply, per capita water supply availability, all of those have made impressive gains. But when it comes to financing of these schemes, central and state government schemes predominantly focus on financing the infrastructure expansion. And the O&M expenditure is often left to the local government, right? So how do local governments fund all of these things? the most predictable answer is user charges, right? You are providing a service and you are charging money for providing that particular service, right? But we have looked at data for about 2,600 ULGs across the country from 1819 to FY23, and we find that on an average, a typical Indian city is only able to recover about 40% of its O&M cost by way of user charges, right? So for the rest 60%, it has to, doesn't have a predictable source which comes from service-led tariffs, right? And if you leave the situation in a business as usual context, the gap keeps on widening, right? So we have looked at if things continue to grow at the current rate, the chart on the right, it's a slightly disconcerting picture. So, and even within cities, the picture is very different. If you look at metropolitan cities, which have a population of over 1 million, they are able to get roughly 50% of their O&M costs through user charges. But as you go down, when you look at emerging cities with population between 1 lakh to 10 lakh, and smaller cities with population less than 1 lakh, they are able to recover only 30 to 40% and less than 30% of O&M cost by way of user charges. So the gap for them between how much they need to spend and how much they have is very stark, right? And while everybody says we need to increase water charges to sustainably finance it, the political economy of the same might not allow 100% cost recovery in the medium term or even in the long term, right? So what do? We have a small, so we have a small case study from Karnataka. We looked at the data of 36 urban local governments and to see how are they financing their O&M expenditure on water. So in Karnataka, ULGs receive a grant from the state government, which is recommended by the State Finance Commission, to finance electricity bills of supplying water, right? So over the years, we found that grants have been given, but those grants are not enough to sort of take care of the rest of the expenses, which is left unfunded by your O&M costs, right? But they do make a difference. And Karnataka is not the only example. We have seen such grants given recommended by state finance commissions in Tamil Nadu as well as Kerala, right? So what we think should happen is that instead of looking at grants as a only measure to fill the gap between user charges and costs, grants should be integrated into how O&M expenditure is being planned, right? State finance commissions should be upfront with recommending grants regularly in their five-yearly reports. And ULG should also be allowed to use Union Finance Commission grants to fund O&M. And in this, we are particularly enthused by the recommendation of the 16th Finance Commission, which has allowed ULGs to utilize part of their grants to incur operation and maintenance costs. And at the same time, there also needs to be focus on user charges, for which I will hand it over to Vasu as to how they can be reformed.
Thank you, Tushar. I'll reform user charges in order to recover O&M cost. We need to focus on two things. First is the demand base. The demand base, the tariffs that we are charging, it should be cost reflective, and it requires that first we know how much are we spending on providing the services. So accurate reporting of operations and maintenance costs. Then the tariffs that we are charging, they should be indexed to the operations and maintenance cost, and they need to be revised periodically. Second, on the billing and collection charge. So how much we are demanding, we should ideally, in an ideal world, we should be able to collect the 100%. That requires bill reaches on time. We are able to provide convenient payment options to the people, and there's a regular enforcement mechanism that is being done by the urban local bodies. So this is a 2023 study. We have taken a legal review of the publicly available documents, government orders, acts. So it shows that only 6 states as of now have their tariffs that are linked to the operations and maintenance costs. And further, in 13 states, the acts, the government orders do not have provisions for periodic revision of tariffs. So this leaves, these are weak legal mandates that restrict ULGs. When it comes to what is happening on ground, metering is an option, basically is a way of charging people as per they consume. And if we see the metering status, it's low across all the ULG categories, as Tushar discussed. And like even in the metropolitan cities, it's like less than 20%. So in the absence of metering, people charge on the basis of proxies, that is property size, flat lump sum charges, that basically disincentivize you to conserve water. And second thing is, it's again the principle of equity. So for example, in a town like Faridabad, a small household is being charged the same rate, 90 rupees per month, as compared to a bungalow. However, the consumption between the two varies a lot. When it comes to the online revision of tariffs, we have tracked it across 11 states, and only 3 states have revised it post 2020. Why is it happening so? Tariffs are considered politically unpopular. People do not have a knowledge of the cost that is being incurred to supply waters. So that is why these charges are being considered as arbitrary charges. The question is what we can do. We recommend that the state bring up the state level rules, which basically require that the tariffs are linked to the operations and maintenance costs. These are revised periodically. And this needs to be basically bounded by a foundational enabler through IAC and citizen awareness about how much is it costing to supply water to people. So it can be in terms of mentioning that in easy to read language in consumer bills, or highlighting what is the current gap between the cost and the revenues, so that people do not consider this charge as an arbitrary levy. Coming to collections, the demand base is already low, but even if we look at the collections, on an average, we are not able to collect even 50% of what is demanded. And if you look at states like Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Haryana, they're performing really less. So this compounds the problem of the inadequate tariffs that are required. How do we solve for this problem? It's basically, I'll give you an example. So for services like internet or electricity, we're receiving bills on a day-to-day basis. But what about water? I don't think we hardly receive an SMS from the water supplier reminding us to pay, or the penalties that could be incurred. That is the first problem. This is compounded by the staff shortage. CAG did a survey around, there's a 37% gap in the staffing at municipal levels all across the states. So what is the solution? Solution already exists. So various states have invested in IT systems, centralized IT systems across the states. But what needs to be done, that simply by updating the mobile numbers of the consumers, you need to basically operationalize the functionality of sending reminders, bills through SMS. And this can be followed by basically adopting a one household, one bill, one collector model. This has been done in Odisha through Jal Sathi model, where SHG women members are being incentivized. They are collecting water charges along with property taxes and SWM charges. And along with that, this has also helped in increasing the IAC. So they have been able to convert the illegal metered connections to metered ones. So this has helped them a lot. This can be replicated all across. And needs to be followed by enforcement with focus primarily on arrear and commercial arrear-heavy commercial properties, so that the charges can be basically incentivized. So the key takeaways from the presentation: service delivery has improved, but O&M remains structurally weak. User charges cannot be the sole. Sole source of funding these sources. So we suggest that we follow an integrated approach in terms of gradual tariff reforms and aid through State Finance Commission, Union Finance Commission grants, followed by full O&M recovery in terms of, at least in terms of metropolitan cities. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, dodging our cities, because most of the infrastructure capital grants are well taken care of or covered. The area which is more tricky is about how operation and maintenance. And in that, also the component of user charges and progressively revising those charges are a great concern. And your data from Karnataka is clearly showing the kind of aspect. But again, the one silver lining is that 16th Finance Commission grants could partially be used. So that's a good news also, the experience of one bill, one collector model. We also saw one very similar interesting experiment around Indore, where the women SHG groups are also using for those collection, which is like trying to gather data. Third is also a very interesting model of where while paying your property taxes, your mobile numbers are updated. And that is triggering certain amount of automated SMSs, but not particularly highlighting water bills, but it's more about reminder of property, but this gets clubbed. But this is really interesting. Now I would like to invite Shishir Gupta. Shishir Gupta is a senior fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress, New Delhi. He's trained as an economist from Delhi School of Economics, and prior to joining his present position, he was working as an McKinsey Global Institute for 14 years. Welcome, Shishir, and Shishir will be sharing his talk on where to spend matters a lot for service delivery, a case of solid waste management services.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I was worried because my name was not there. So I was not sure whether I was going to present. But thanks a lot to the organizers for creating this wonderful platform where people from different walks come together and discuss in an open manner, right? So congratulations to the entire team. And thanks for having me. I work at a think tank in Delhi, and we typically don't interact with people who are working on the ground. So this work we have done, I've done with a colleague of mine, Rishita, and we have learned a lot over the last 2 days. Thank you. I need to press the top arrow. Yeah. Okay. So we have learned a lot in the last 2 days on the kind of resources that are needed for improvement in urbanization in terms of delivery of services, and the various challenges that we have around generating those resources. What I am doing in this paper with Rishita is to ask a different question, which is, are we spending efficiently enough? So that is the question that it is, I think, and I'll come to that. And the core conclusion is that we find very little evidence that cities that spend more on solid waste management services necessarily have better outcomes. So this paper actually calls, and our subsequent work with Gurgaon Municipal Corporation actually calls out for improvement in how we are spending money. And I think I want the audience to take away that as a message, right? It's important. So why is urbanization important? I'm an economist, so I have to put framework to different things. It is important because urbanization, which is on the x-axis, the rate of urbanization for China, Italy, US, and a couple other Western European countries, increases along with per capita income. Okay, so the message is urbanization increases and it helps countries reach higher levels of per capita income. Why does that happen? Because urban areas are both more productive and they grow faster. So it is because of this that we see urbanization and prosperity go hand in hand. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but that virtuous cycle of urbanization and growth seems to have broken in India. Why do I say that? Because this left panel is essentially tracking urbanization of India from 1971 census data, which keeps on increasing. So currently, according to last census, 2011, we were 31.2% urbanized, right? But on the right panel is the share of India's GDP or NDP that comes from urban areas. And in 1971, that share was 38%. 38% GDP coming from urban areas in 1971, when we were around 18% urbanized, right? By 2000, urban areas, according to government, and this is all Government of India data, by 2000, 52% of GDP was coming from urban areas, right? But the last data point we have is 2011-12 of this series. And surprisingly, shockingly, the share of urban has remained same according to Government of India. So while urbanization has increased, share of urban has remained constant, which means during this period, per capita growth in urban areas was slower than rural, okay? I mean, that is what it means. So, why that may be happening, I think we all know intuitively the answer, right? I mean, why should growth in urban areas be slowing down? Because partly it has to be because of the urban decay in services that we see, right? So as opposed to 100% expected level of solid waste management in terms of collected, treated, especially in treatment, we are very low. Water service delivery, compared to what the benchmark is, on an average, we are fairly low. And on housing services, again, very expensive housing, right? So the point is, the quality of urban services has been poor. And if we look at its relationship with growth, I think there seems to be a break in trend, which points to the emergent situation in this scenario. What is needed to improve service delivery? I was part of MGI's 2010 report on urbanization, where we, which with this, along with the HPEC 2009, I think, report, both these reports called for significant increase in spend on urban infra. We put a number 1.2 trillion. I think HPEC number was around similar. So it was a call to increase the spend by I think 4 to 6x for 20 years. Okay, so this was one of the key recommendations, right? And it made sense because a lot of us know that India is at the bottom in terms of countries that spend on municipal services. So this sort of makes sense that your services are poor because you are spending a lot less, okay? However, this begs a question. Are we spending less, or are Indian cities spending less everywhere, which means in all services, right? Or in every single service. And that is what we explored as part of a couple of papers that I have done with Rishita. So what did we do? We picked solid waste management as a service. Why? Because to compare spend efficiency, you need the amount of spend that is happening, and you also need the outcome that cities are generating, right? And these two are, available, at least to my understanding, for solid waste management as a service, right? So we looked at these two, how much are cities spending and what is their outcome for 27 major cities in the country. This is the key slide. So this is a sample of those cities. We clubbed them into more than 5 million, 1 to 5 million, less than a million population. The black bars are how much they spent on solid waste in terms of per capita. So Bombay, for example, was spending roughly 1,200 bucks, 1,200 rupees per capita annually. These are the associated Swachh Sarvekshan scores. So Bombay had a score of 77%. These yellow bubbles are essentially their spend, how much they are spending relative to what the HPEC recommended. So maybe we can this is not that important to understand, but this is important, these messages, right? So Bombay and Ahmedabad, similar scores, 77 and 73% according to Swachh Sarvekshan. Similar class of cities, I mean, you can argue that Bombay is much bigger, but very different spend. Bombay was spending 4x, or is spending 4x, whereas the outcome is comparable to Ahmedabad. In fact, of late, Bombay's outcome has deteriorated significantly, right? Similar message runs when we compare Chandigarh and Jaipur. Similar level of spending, but very different outcome. Last point, which is highlighting the importance of spend for some class of cities. Aizawl, for example. Aizawl was spending, Aizawl is a case, I think the alignment has gone for a toss. So I'll just continue by saying Aizawl was a case where the spend was less and the outcome was also suboptimal. So there are cases where you need to spend more to improve the outcome. But for a lot of these big cities, the point is they're spending much more, 287% of what was recommended, 129% of what was recommended. And it is not necessary that those who are spending more have a better outcome. Very quickly, we are currently doing, Rishita is actually leading this study where we are collaborating with Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, doing a deep dive on this topic for Municipal Corporation of Gurgaon. So I'll just share a couple of high-level slides on that. If you compare Gurgaon and Indore, Gurgaon, I mean, they are roughly similar, at least in population terms. Sorry, in terms of area, both are around 200 square kilometers. Gurgaon's population is half that of Indore, at 0.9 or let's say 1 million. Right? In terms of their outcome in solid waste management, according to Swachh Sarvekshan scores, started off at similar levels in 2016. But all of us know that Indore has gone on to top the country, whereas Gurgaon's outcome has stagnated. Sorry. And again, coming back to the central thesis, it's not as if Gurgaon is spending less. Gurgaon spends roughly 650 crore on solid waste management. Indore 200, 250. So Gurgaon spends 2.5x more and aggregate and 5x more per capita. But still, the outcome is far worse than Indore. High-level answer to our mind why Indore has a better outcome is a theme that we talked about in the last 2 days, which is stability of leadership. I think Mr. Ahuja talked about it, that, I mean, Gurgaon has seen such frequent transfers and Indore had relatively stable leadership. And a couple of other points is how are you involving the community in your efforts? So I'm told that Indore, every single citizen is an activist, right? They care deeply about how the city is doing. I am a resident of Gurgaon and I can say that that is not the feeling I have, for example. So again, thanks a lot for giving me the time, and we continue to work in this field. So please give me a shout out if you are interested, and more than happy to engage. Thanks a lot.
Because the kind of results that are coming, probably in your hypothesis, when you're comparing Mumbai with probably Ahmedabad, one factor could also play a role because solid waste is a geographically spread activity. Probably the area, if added, probably it can bring it. But nonetheless, very, very interesting work. Thanks once again. Now we move to our last but not least presenter, Financing for Climate Resilient Wash Services, Upasana Yadav and Saubiya Sareshwala, Center for Water Sanitation, CRDF. I hope all of you know them, but I still will briefly introduce Upasana. Upasana has been associated with CWAS since 2014. She has extensive work experience in WASH, urban development sector. She leads WASH work in implementing city sanitation plans, WASH improvement planning tools, and innovative financing mechanism. She is presenting this jointly with Saubiya. Saubiya has been associated with CWAS since 2019. She has experience in various aspects of municipal finance like budgets, investment planning, property tax, and gender budgeting. Welcome, Upasana and Saubiya. The floor is yours.
many a times the local, the small ULBs don't have the capacity even to have a proper budgeting formats. The opening balance are not matching. There is errors in the calculations, and we are sitting in the age of digitization. So how do we make the budgets the simplified and digitized? So we have prepared a simple budget portal where they can put the budgets. There is it's aligned with the national budgeting manual, and how do they keep the values simply enter into it. They will get the analysis as well as the entire analysis of last 5 years, so that the accounting errors or all those things are reduced, as well as the high level management, they can see just the broader number and the analysis of what is the budget that will look like. And we have next, we have tried to work with some of the ULBs, and we are trying to scale that up. So now we are trying to work with the government of Gujarat as well as now government of Maharashtra, that how we can scale up across all the ULBs. And in the innovative financing, for the WAS services, we look at what are some of the examples of blended finance, because we heard in the morning that blended finance, how do we merge the private and the public capital together to bring to reduce the gap of the wash financing. So when we had drawn across the value chain of the water as well as the sanitation services, we have found that some of the examples that are already available and some of the examples that we have worked on and tested in the cities where we are working on. So these are some of the examples, like the solar on the wash infrastructure, because we found that the cities are spending around 50% of the budgets on only the electricity bills, and that too on the wash, especially the water and the sanitation. So how do we reduce it and convert into the renewable energy? And we have sort of developed a PPP sort of a structures where they don't have to give the upfront capital cost for the solars, and it can be done through the charges. As well as we have tried the sanitation credit for the toilet construction as well as for the soap and tank constructions in the cities along with the SHG members. For the scheduled desludging, we have tried the performance annuity model, and that we have tested in the cities in the Maharashtra, that for the cities that don't have the desludging trucks, how do they invite the private sectors where they bring in all the capital as well as the infrastructure, and the cities will have to pay. Okay, and the cities will have to pay only for the services that they are paying. So it's a outcome link base. The cities have tried for the hybrid annuity model, as well as there are some of the good examples for the PPP in the reuse sector also. Yeah, next. So now I hand over to the Saubiya to take it for the next slides.
Thanks, Upasana. So we'll quickly go through what we are doing. We have only 3 minutes left. So we were working on mapping how many municipal bonds have been issued in India since last 30 years, as mentioned by Meera ma'am in the finance panel. So around 4,030 crore of municipal bond, INR 4,030 crore municipal bond has been issued till 2026. The municipal bond market is growing. However, now we have a landscape of green bond market which is emerging in climate finance aspects. So we know what are green bonds. They are basically tagged and labeled as for green infrastructure. However, there are various sectors in which for renewable energy, sustainable water management, etc., which are issued by the government of India, and also RBI SEBI and RBI guidelines are there. Then the government of India came with Zoom ho gaya hai. Then we have in Indian context, there are cities like Ghaziabad and Indore that have put in efforts to issue green municipal bond, and government of India has given an effort of providing incentives to the cities, which is 10 crore for issuing 100 crore municipal bond. However, there are challenges where when we mapped down the amount of issuance that is put. So when we mapped cost benefit analysis of green bonds, we realized that the cost of issuing green bond and the amount that is put for verifying it through third-party verifications comes out to be higher than the incentives that are offered as well as the greenium that is offered currently. So there is a strong thought which says that greenium should be either increased when we compare to other markets across the world, which can give benefit and motivation to the investors as well as the municipal corporations or municipalities to issue municipal bonds and green bonds. Also, we tried to map out the green bonds for wash projects specifically, and we found out that a lot of projects which are in the wash sector are actually green projects. So, Vadodara Municipal Corporation, they came with the first certified green bonds, which was actually the bid was subscribed 44 times, and it had a stable AA plus rating. And then Indore Municipal Corporation also came up with a green bond, which we already saw earlier. So, in order to see more details, we have documented a research on moving towards climate justice and also on green bonds for financing climate resilient wash development. You can see it on our website and also see the QR code for reference. We also did an assessment of mapping out creditworthiness for Indian cities. So we mapped out 30 Indian cities. We took this data from public information. This data was basically from PAS portal and City Finance portal, and we developed a simple Excel-based tool. So this was done for 30 municipal corporations in India. And this tool, the tool that is there, it is available on our website. If you request us, we will definitely share it with you. It's a simple Excel-based tool where publicly available data, information of financial and service level, if given as an input, it can help you assess the creditworthiness of the city. So basically, it can be used as a precursor to credit rating, but not actual rating. But that can help a city to analyze whether they want to assess, whether they want to go to the market to borrow or not. If the city does not fall in the investment grade rating, then they can definitely improve their financial health through this, with the help of this tool and the indicators that are there. And then they can take a decision whether they want to go to the market for credit rating, because credit ratings are actually expensive processes, and the cities have to do it twice or thrice if it is not reaching the investment grade rating. One of the key findings from the creditworthiness assessment framework was we found that larger cities have significantly higher potential to borrow from the market. Currently, cities only borrow 100 to 200 crore from the market because of the incentives that are provided. However, if you see cities like Pune, right now they have issued a municipal bond of 200 crore. However, their capacity to borrow is almost 9,500 crore. So we also found out the borrowing capacity, a tentative borrowing capacity. But apart from this, one of the interesting findings is that currently in India, there are 10 municipal corporations which are issuing the municipal bond on a regular basis, right? But but other cities are not doing that, maybe because they might not have an understanding of where their credit rating actually stands, because credit rating was done in 2017 under Amrut, but post that they were not revised. So smaller cities have a reasonable potential to borrow, yet they have not borrowed from the market. For example, if you see a city like Raipur, it has a potential to borrow around 486 crores. So that is how smaller cities can also go to the market if they have an understanding of their creditworthiness. Again, we developed a framework for ESG assessment for cities, where there were indicators tested across 20 Indian cities. And ESG is basically environment, social, and governance. Just 1 minute to wrap. And it will assess. We have created a dashboard also, and our team has developed basically to understand where the city stands in front of in terms of its ESG score. So this will help in measuring the sustainability and societal impact. And just cumulative findings of the entire finance sector that we would like to highlight is that there are a lot of international funding portfolios which are present. However, it is really difficult for ULBs, that is at the local level, to tap that funding. Also, we look into more and more of innovative finance options like carbon credits, green bonds, municipal bonds to tap finance apart from public sector. And it is important to make cities creditworthy and ESG ready. And if you want to see more about our work, you can visit our page. It's at cwas.org.in, and we have a separate page of innovative financing mechanism. So we have a lot of documentation, presentations, and our studies on this page. Thank you.
Thank you, Upasana, and thank you, Saubiya. Don't go away. I will now also request all the presenters, speakers, please come over here. Although, we have exceeded the time, but still it would be good to have a couple of questions and answers. So just a quick recap, we started with Jai Bhagwan's presentation about policy-related framework. Probably Jai has left because he has to go. So just from the presentation from Cape Town and how the private sector market is getting ready through policy and related aspects. We had second presentation from, very interesting presentation from the governance work from Madagascar, where integrated governance and finance aspects are highlighted from a empirically grounded case. The third presentation was from the team from Janaagraha, Tushar and Vasu, talked about a very important aspect of financing, operation and maintenance, and the kind of gap from such infrastructure spending, particularly some of the cases that his studies have taken. And last but not least, our two colleagues from Upasana and Saubiya talked about the overview of climate financing tools and their work from CWAS. So now open to you for a quick question, and then and also direct if you have any specific question to any of the speaker. Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
Yes. I'm Shanti Maduresan from Dan Foundation, Madurai. So really excellent presentation by all of you. I have a question on with Janaagraha sir organization. This mainly you are talking about the finance, especially you are classifying Tamil Nadu government, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and analysis of how the panchayat, the fund is allocated. Fund is allocated, the State Finance Commission, Central Finance Commission, like that way you are talking about the planning. So normally in urban planning also, whether they have allocated funds for the MP fund and the MLA fund, that is the question I want to raise.
From the urban planning, whether
Yes.
there's a state or central finance commission, I will give this question to Tushar because you were helping in SFC.
Ma'am, your question is whether they have allocated fund for
Fund
out
for-
of MP and MLA
Yeah,
led
MLA
funds.
fund for this.
That is something that we haven't looked at. Because MP and MLA funds, number one, ticket sizes are small, and they are spread across both rural and urban areas, and we have been focusing only on urban focus schemes. So that is something maybe we can look at further, but we haven't looked at it.
Because in a panchayat level, in the gram panchayat level, what they are doing is a State Finance Commission, Central Finance Commission fund is allocated. And MLA fund, nearly 5 lakhs per panchayat is allocated. MP fund 1.5 lakh allocated. So like that way, whether in this, because you are, I don't know about this urban planning, urban kind of things, that's what I am raised the question. Yes, thank you.
Any other question? Any other second? Ram? Can you, Ashish, can you give the Ram is there?
Hi, I'm Ram Khandelwal. I'm the director at Urban Innovation Lab. Wonderful presentations, and my question is to you, Shishir. I've been a great fan of your work since MGI report. So I have two questions here. So first is you spoke about urban NDP. So I'm really curious because we used to do this work at PwC. When you're talking about urban NDP, what specific source of information, because we don't have frameworks in India through which we are calculating city GDPs, right? So what is the specific source you're referring to when you're saying the curve is flattening? Because it's a very strong observation. So would like to know a little more about that, and then I can maybe ask second question if you allow.
Second question over TV.
Okay.
Okay, please.
Shall I? So thank you for the encouraging word. Actually, this comes from Government of India only. So Government of India or MOSPI estimates urban-rural share of NDP once every 5 to 10 years. So this is not my creation. They used to publish it every 5-10 years till 2012. So these are their estimates. How they do it? Essentially, they look at multiple sources of data. For example, economic census. You have the data by urban-rural split. Employment, you have urban-rural split by sector, right? So if you assume some productivity assumptions between urban-rural by sector, you can actually come up with something like that. That's my guess of how they do it. Because some of these fundamental data gives you at urban-rural difference level. But this is Government of India MOSPI data.
Yeah, I understand. So we're referring to MOSPI right now. It's not exactly city GDP per se, but
It's urban, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
it's district urban share from.
No, sorry. This is all India share of urban. This is not district. Yes, this is not available. So this is not available from district level bottom up to urban. Okay, this is government or MOSPI estimate of urban NDP.
Yeah. Because they have
So
very
it's-
peculiar observations. Some of the peculiar observations maybe we can catch up over coffee,
Yeah,
tea
sure.
or coffee. But when we say urban is stagnating,
Yeah.
why that urban is stagnating? It's the definition with the urban.
Government of India census, right? I mean, it's internally, it's a MOSPI
Yeah.
document.
Yeah, because
So-
GDP is increasing the way we are measuring GDP and the way we are measuring city growth.
Yeah.
Are they actually working in tandem? Because
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because this also got to do it because I have to check this data I have not checked, which is aggregated at MOSPI
Yeah,
level.
this-
But the
Happy
question
to
that you
share.
are- that question that also you are raising has a lot of issue with the boundary and lot of ruralization of industrial output. For example, look at Indore. Much of manufacturing is accounted out of this thing. Could be that, but I think for that we can take the conversation.
very
there.
thought-provoking.
Very
slides.
thought-provoking.
Yeah, please, thank you again. We should look at this. I mean, I'm surprised actually that when I talk to some of MOSPI or CSO people, as McKinsey, they themselves had not looked at it, right? So I think, yeah.
Okay, big round of,
Thank
in
you.
the interest of time, a big round of applause for all the speakers. I'm sure you will have far more questions, so I think tea and coffee are there, Saubiya, or straight to another. Okay, so what
So I request everyone to, we formally close this session, but then we have tea and coffee outside. Please grab your tea and then we move to the poster sessions where there is exhibition. And
The silent, yeah.
sorry, but thank you Shashwat sir for chairing this session and thank you Ashish for keeping the time so we could complete on time.